Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Community Issues, your favorite fortnightly program. Tonight, we are going to talk about commending East London anti-racist heroes. And I have one of our veteran guests in the studio, who's a good friend of mine. We go back a long way. He's someone who's been involved with the community since the early 70s, I would say. Is that correct? He, of course, doesn't need any introduction. He is our one and only Rajon Uddin Jalal bhai, sitting on my left. Jalal bhai, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam and good evening to everyone.
Thank you very much for making the time to come to my program. Along with Jalal bhai, there are two young people whose parents, shall I say, has been involved in fighting anti-racism in East London, and you've been brought up in the back of that. So on my far right is Prithi Ummie.
Yes.
Good evening, Prithi Ummie, and welcome.
Thank you.
And sitting right next to Prithi Ummie is Fateha Begum. Fateha, a very good evening. Thank you very much for coming to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, Rajon Uddin Jalal, an activist who's devoted his life to combating racism, not just here in the East End of London, but all over the country for many years. Obviously that in that process you became a councillor in London Borough of Tower Hamlets. You became the deputy leader, and you got involved in many anti-racist campaigns. I know for a fact, Jalal bhai, that although I wasn't a councillor when you were a councillor, but as soon as you retired from the council, we kind of, as young people, took over. But you and I, we go back a long way, when the Federation of Bangladeshi Youth Organizations were formed, and after Al-Tabari got murdered, how the East London community united itself to say enough is enough. Black and white, let's unite. And you were part of that movement. I am going to start off with you, Jalal bhai, in asking you just a few questions before I go over to the two young people that we've got in the studio. My first question to you is, Jalal bhai, is how old were you when you first got involved with this anti-racist movement thing?
I think I was around about 16 years old when I first got involved in anti-racism. But before I make any further comments, can I take the opportunity to pay a tribute to two of our community activists who have died recently. They are known to you as well,
of course, but
I think this is a good platform to mention their contribution and to pay respect to them.
Sure.
I'd like to pay a tribute to Tajammul Haq Tony Saheb,
from Birmingham.
From Birmingham.
Yes, I've known him for many years. Yes.
Yes, and he has passed away recently. And of course, the other person who is also known to you and me is late Shah Abid Ali. He was a key community activist.
Absolutely.
During the Liberation War of Bangladesh, and later on he became one of our comrades in the Federation of Bangladeshi Youth Organizations.
Absolutely.
When we were mobilizing young Bengalis all over the country to become community activists and oppose racism and fascism. And of course, tonight is a very important and special program for me, because unlike in the past, what you have done is today you have invited two young people from our community to come and join us. And so thank you to you, Hafiz and ATN Bangla, for inviting me to join you tonight.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Jalal bhai. It's a pleasure. But before we get into the actual discussion itself, I now briefly introduce the other two young guests. Prithi Ummie, I understand that you currently work as a banking consultant for a bank. Your ancestors have been involved in fighting anti-racist movement here in Tower Hamlet, and your dad, in fact, if I could say so, was very much involved in that, that is very good friend of Jalal Bhai and mine as well, and has been known to us for many years. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How do you feel about being kind of brought up in the East End of London?
I feel very lucky because I was able to be a part of the journey of the pioneers, and I do feel like being brought up in East London, I was able to experience and see a lot of things that have made me who I am today, and I feel that I have been able to integrate into society better due to the struggle that you all went through. So obviously I'm very grateful to you all, but I feel like you have shaped the youth of today.
Thank you so much. I will come back to you, Prithi, later on, and we'll talk in a bit more details. Now let me go to Fateha. You're also a younger generation compared to us. I understand your father was also involved in the anti-racist movement as well. You've been brought up in the Brick Lane area.
Yes.
Currently, you line manage security staff for a railway company, and you're also pursuing a degree in criminology and psychology. My God. How do you feel about being brought up in the East End of London in the back of all this anti-racist movement and everything else?
So I think growing up, we were sort of hidden from what was happening out there by our parents. We were very protected by what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as I grew, when I was looking for jobs, college, university, schools, just going to the local supermarket, I realized that we were different. We were being treated differently.
Mm.
There wasn't many job opportunities for us. A lot of clubs, youth clubs, were not as welcoming as they were to other sort of ethnic background people. I think it took a while for us to realize that. When we did come to realize that, we took a stand for it.
So it was a great challenge for you in a way.
It was very,
trying
very
to kind of integrate into the normal society
because we were
and
brought
its
up.
expectation.
We were brought up very traditionally as Bangladeshi girls used to be. So for us to sort of come out of the house and mix and have different types of friends, and it was very, very difficult.
Sure.
Because of the way we were brought up at home.
Sure.
And the shielding that was sort of done to us as children when we were growing up in Brick Lane. But obviously now it's a completely different story.
Fantastic. We'll talk about that a bit more, in a bit more details a little later on. Let me go to the man himself, Jalal Bhai, whom I've known for many, many years. And I know he's dedicated all his life, more or less, to this anti-racist movement. Jalal Bhai, could you give us a brief summary of the history of the Bengali migrants in the UK?
So the initial phase of migration started with our ancestors who were working in British ships which sailed from Kolkata to the UK to places like Tilbury Dock and so on. So, yeah.
Jalal Bhai, sorry, I need to stop you because we need to go on a short break.
Okay.
But we will continue with the question after the break.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Stay with us. We will be going on a short break. We'll be back very soon. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from a break. Thank you for staying with us on the other end. If you have just joined us, very welcome to Community Issues. Tonight we are talking about commemorating the heroes that fought racism in the East End of London. And in my studio I have Rajon Uddin Jalal, who is one of the anti-racist heroes of the 1970s. And on the back of that we have two young ladies who's been brought up in East London excuse me, following the sacrifice that their ancestors have made in fighting racism. Just before we went on break, I was talking to Jalal bhai, and I asked him to give us a brief summary of the history of Bengali migrants in the UK. And Jalal bhai, you started, but we had to go on a break, so I'm sorry about that.
No.
Could we continue from where we left?
Yeah. So the first phase of migration happened with our seamen. That was during the British Empire, when a small number of people from Bangladesh, where we originate from, would travel to Kolkata, the seaport there, and they would find jobs which will bring them to the UK in places like Tilbury Docks and so on in the East End of London. And that's the initial phase of migration that started the Bengali settlement.
Coming over to the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the second phase of the migration happened with men from our community who were given vouchers.
They were called boy vouchers, weren't they?
No, that's the
Or was
next
it a
one.
labour voucher, was it?
This was a labor voucher.
Right.
This was a labor voucher that was issued to our parents when we were East Pakistanis.
Right, okay.
And they were allowed to bring their able-bodied sons,
Right.
not daughters,
The
to
son.
work in the various industries.
Right.
Which
And these were jobs which the locals wouldn't do.
if they did the jobs themselves, then they would not be inviting people from
Abroad to come and do it, yeah.
from abroad and offering incentives.
Okay.
Come to the land of opportunity.
Sure. And what was the other one? So
The other one was the family vouchers.
right.
So mass migration from Bangladesh to the UK happened after the independence movement of Bangladesh in 1971. That's when families were allowed to bring their children.
Right.
And as a result of that, you had thousands of people.
Come over.
So people like you and me came with families, with our parents.
Sure.
But there was a negative side of the migration as well, because the immigration policy was divisive, and many of the people who were over the age of 18 could not join the rest of their family.
Right, okay.
And as a result of that, you have had the divided families. So most of us from that generation who enjoyed the benefit of the family vouchers have still got siblings left in Bangladesh.
Because they were over 18 at the time and couldn't
Yeah.
come over. Right. How did racism actually impact the Bengali community, shall I say the Bangladeshi community, in terms of housing and everything else that affects a migrant community when they go to a new country?
Yeah.
So things like housing, finance, and everything else.
We were facing a hostile atmosphere in this country. So, Enoch Powell,
yeah.
the then Tory MP,
Yep.
made a speech in 1968 and declared that there will be rivers forming of blood
Yeah.
in the UK. So that was his declaration against migrant workers. And ever since then, there has been the momentum with the racist political parties and thugs on the streets who are making life a hell for our people.
Right.
So you'd get beaten on the street, you'd get beaten in schools, you would not get access to any jobs, you were confined to working in workplaces that were owned mainly by our people or people with a migrant background. So, for example, in the East End of London, most of the garment factories were owned by either Jewish people or migrants from other communities. And later on, a lot of our people also became owners of garment workshops.
Right. Thank you, Jalal. We will come back to that without a doubt. But could you just kind of describe, I know you touched on it very kind of gently, what was the political environment of East London like in the mid-70s? And how did it affect the migrant community at large?
Once again, I'll repeat to you that we were facing a hostile environment. And so you had Paki bashing following the speech by Eno Powell. And then when Maggie Thatcher became the Prime Minister of this country, she declared that...
early 80s?
Early 80s.
Yeah.
She declared that the country has become swamped by people of different cultures. So that was a direct racist comment. And that created momentum for political organizations like the National Front, later BNP, subsequently English Defence League, and so on and so forth. And so on the one hand, you had violence on the streets against our people, and then at the same time, you also had institutionalized racism.
Sure.
So we did not have access to any public services.
Okay. Bearing in mind what you've just told us, Jalal Bhai, I mean, obviously, someone growing up in that period and seeing all this racism that exists within the community and in and around you, moving around at that time must have been very difficult. And in doing so, how did it all kind of inspire you to kind of fight racism for the Bangladeshi community?
So there were no-go areas in the East End of London. You did not venture out on your own, first of all.
Okay.
You moved around in groups. Other people tried to learn driving so that they were safe.
Right.
Some young people tried to learn kung fu, to martial arts to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And there have been occasions when people like me have been beaten up in fun fairs, or if we went to a meeting, we were picked on by white thugs.
So the strategies were that you would not go out into a no-go area.
Yeah.
You would go out in groups, or you would travel in a car.
Yeah.
And you would learn to defend yourself.
Yes, and then...
how does the community actually mobilize itself to kind of fight racism in a systematic way?
Right, so as far as I'm concerned, I became an activist through the Bangladeshi Youth Movement for Equal Rights.
Okay.
So we used to meet in a place called the Asian Studies Center in Mardell Street, London E1.
Right.
And there, under the guidance of our teacher, late Shah Lutfur Rahman, we formed the Bangladeshi Youth Movement for Equal Rights.
But
and that is an organization.
There were many other organizations that were formed.
There were other organizations like the Bengali Housing Action Group. The Bangladeshi Welfare Association always existed, but they were more interested in issues in Bangladesh.
Than over here.
And there were other youth organizations like the Youth Front and Progressive Youth Organization, which formed later on, and through them
so throughout the East End of London, there were pockets of Bengali organization that joined hands, and in doing so, they also encouraged Bengali organizations from elsewhere in the country to come and join hands with them and form what they called the Federation of Bangladeshi Youth Organization. Is that correct?
That's right. That came later on, and the momentum for change was created as a consequence of the murder of Altab Ali back in 1978.
4th of May 1978.
And Ishaq Ali a few weeks later, which was on the Hackney Road. And that is when the younger generation said, enough is enough. Here to stay, here to fight. Because our parents always thought that they will go back to Bangladesh.
Sure.
For whatever reason.
But you knew that there was no going back for you?
No, because the younger people had decided that this was home. This is where we will have to live.
They're here to stay, and they would fight for their right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jalal, I will come back to you. I think that's very interesting. For the two young people that are here, you've obviously heard Rajon Uddin Jalal Bhai speak of his experiences the difficulties they faced at the time and what they had to do to organize themselves, the community, and to deal with that racism in a systematic way. Obviously, you were probably born either during that time or after that time. So, my first question is going to go to you, Prithi. How do you perceive the contribution of your ancestors and people like Rajon Uddin Jalal in improving the lives of the Bangladeshi community in East London?
I perceive it in a positive manner, but not only that, I feel that it was crucial for us to move ahead. It was crucial for us to gain opportunities that we have today, and I honestly do believe that without the struggle, without the courage that you guys have shown, we would not be where we are today. And people actually getting killed.
So you are grateful
Definitely.
for the contribution that people like your dad, who is an anti-racist campaigner, a fighter, who's been around for a very
Definitely.
long time, people like Rajon Uddin Jalal.
Definitely.
And there are many out there that I can mention. So you are grateful for the contribution that
I am
they've made.
exceptionally grateful, and I just want to say I was probably a little bit past the time when things had kind of become slightly better. But I remember even till today, my relatives will speak to me and they'll be like, oh, your dad and his friends, they went out there and, you know, they were fearless, but, you know, it kind of made things hard because, you know, there was a backlash because if they'd go and fight, you know, we were scared of the consequences. And now they're just so grateful because without you guys doing that, without your bravery, without the struggle that you went through, we would not have the opportunities today. And I'll be honest with you, we probably wouldn't have been able to defeat
as young
and conquer
people
them.
growing up, were you afraid that when people like your dad and Rajon Uddin Jalal and many others went out to challenge these guys, that there would be backlashes and that in itself would affect you?
I wasn't, because you guys had already conquered it by then. You had defeated them by then. You had come together and you had done whatever you needed to do. But like my mother, who was at home with her children, and my relative, my aunt, because you didn't have social housing back then. So I know that you guys kind of had to take over these tower blocks where it was just the Bengali community and then people would try and set it on fire.
Sure.
There was certain incidents that happened and they were like, this is a backlash. But then when you all got together, the fight that you fought is the reason why we are here today.
That was the squatting movement.
That's what
Yes.
he's talking about.
It
Yes.
was amazing.
Okay, we'll talk about that, Prithi, a bit more in details if we have time towards the end of the program. Let me go to Fateha. Fateha, you are the daughter of an anti-racist campaigner. How do you honor and preserve your family's legacy?
So I think the most important thing for me is to not forget, is to make sure our families don't forget, our children don't forget, and educating our children about what happened and who the people were who fought for our rights, and just making sure that, yeah, people are not forgotten, and you know, we are respected, we are remembered, you know, as fighters and people who are not going to be okay with this kind of racism and discrimination.
Sure, sure. I'm going to ask you a supplementary question, Fateha. As you live in London, do you notice any lingering, especially around Brick Lane? You know, it's the hot spot, isn't it? Home of the Bengali, shall we say. Do you notice any lingering effects of racism or discrimination at this present moment in time?
So I think, like Prithi has said, that there are heroes of their time who have fought for us and our rights. But I still feel like there is a lot of racism, there is a lot of discrimination.
Is that blatant racism or is that institutionalized racism that you feel at this moment in time?
I think there's a bit of both. I think there is a bit of both. But I think mostly it is the racism that certain people can't pick up on. It's always done under the tables, whether it is a name or an ethnicity, you know, or where you live or where you dress. I think there is still a lot of discrimination and racism happening out there. Maybe not as blatant as it was back in time, but it does still exist.
Okay. So being kind of brought up in and around Brick Lane and kind of growing up there, and you're probably now into the third generation, is it? Or fourth generation? So you feel that despite the contribution that your ancestors have made in terms of combating racism and challenging them and fighting for equalities and justice, that there is still a certain element of racism that exists?
Definitely, I do. And
Yeah.
I think we as the next generation, we are the ones who have to sort of conquer it. You know, I think what people have done in the past, they've done and we're very grateful for. But I think we as the youth, you know, as mothers, as sisters, as daughters, we need to stand up and continue that legacy.
So how are you challenging that to continue with that legacy?
I think myself personally, I think with me, I'm somebody who does not stand for this at all. If I feel any sort of racism, any sort of discrimination to myself, or if I see a situation in front of me, I am very well known to get involved. Okay. And I will speak my mind.
Does that often get you into trouble?
It does get me into trouble, but I sleep peacefully at night knowing that, you know, I stood up for what's right, or I stood up for somebody in need.
Sure.
And I think I lean more towards Bangladeshi people, especially people who come from back home. As you know, we have lots of students and we have loads of people coming over on these, you know, work routes and stuff. And I feel like they're not aware of the rules and regulations of this country. And I feel like it's very, very important for people like us to stand up for them and to educate them and to help them realize, you know, we have rights just because we are Bangladeshi.
Okay, let's just move away slightly from the migrant community, and maybe I should go to Prithi as well. Do you have any children?
I do.
Right. What message do you give to your children in terms of the inequalities that exist, probably more in the east end of London than perhaps elsewhere in the country?
Well, I give them the advice that my dad always gave me and to all of my siblings, which was always stand up for what is right and never back down. If you know you are right, go the whole way, fight it through until you are heard. And I instill that in them now. I say, if there is something you don't like...
So that message is instilled with your children, yeah?
Definitely. And they're very young girls, but they know, and they will tell you when something is not right. Because the way my father embedded it in me, I have to do it in them, because that is the whole point of carrying through a legacy.
And do you feel that message is embedded in them?
I feel like it's getting
instilled within them?
Yeah, I feel like it's getting there. I feel like it will definitely, in the experience.
Let me just stop you. How do you feel, Fateha? I mean, your children must be older than...
Yeah, my children are
Prithi's.
older than her children. I think, like, I don't want to say they don't know what's going on. I think they do know what's going on. But I feel that sometimes we have to be very careful with the way we interpret these things.
Of course.
And we don't want to sort of move them away from what they're trying to achieve.
The normal society, yes,
yeah,
of course.
from
yes.
what they're trying to achieve.
Of course, as parents, you need to teach your children what's right and what's wrong.
Definitely.
And at the same time, tell them to be mindful of the different cultures, the religion, and everything else that exists around us, and to be respectful to each other despite their individual differences. It's very important to strike that balance, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for that. We will. I will come back to you. Let me go to Jalal. Jalal, you've heard these two young people of their struggle, and even to this day now. Are you surprised to hear that maybe not as much as what you saw during your time in the early 70s, mid 70s and so on? But it seems like that racism still exists.
I'm not surprised at all, because every day you see on your television screens there are issues around policing and police brutality against Asian and black people. You see reports about discrimination against our communities. So we have not achieved equality, fairness and justice to the full extent. See, the Battle of Brick Lane in 1978 paved the way for our empowerment. So we have been successful in a limited way. So we have gained access to the town hall corridors. But the culprits who are responsible for stopping the Bengali advancement have ensured that we did not make any further progress within the political structures.
Arena, right, okay.
The mainstream political parties are not open about encouraging Bengalis to achieve their full potential. For example,
As a former politician yourself, do you feel that you've actually experienced that yourself?
definitely I have, and you have, and I know other people have. The mainstream political parties have been controlled by small gangs of people who utilize the party through the help of the party policemen to ensure that Bengalis did not make sufficient progress.
And these are party officials that we're talking about?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And so, for a fact that, it took the arrival of George Galloway to have our first Bengali MP. Whereas, as a community, we have a very strong political background. We should have had a number of MPs in the past. People who had potential have been
Thrown out by the party.
have been thrown out, and they have been their careers have been
Destroyed, yeah.
And in fact, it is sad that,
Yeah.
even today we don't have people from our community in ministerial positions. And that is sad, because other communities, when you compare our community with the Indian community or the Pakistani community, they have made more progress compared to us. Yet we have gone through all these struggles, and our advancement has been halted. We have gained some economic empowerment, but not enough. We have.
But the Bangladeshi community itself is a very hard-working community.
You can be a hard-working community, but if the establishment and the system is not in your
doesn't allow you
favor,
to progress, and of course, yes.
your progress will be limited.
Yes.
The one thing that has happened with our community, which is very positive, and that is the educational achievement, even amongst the working class, Bengalis are very high. And that is why you would find that Bengali young people, especially young women, are working in various different...
Jalal, that's very interesting. We will
professions.
talk about this, but we need to go on another short break.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, please don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We're going to go on a short break. We'll be back very soon to continue with this conversation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us. On the other end, if you have just joined us, a very big welcome to Community Issues. Tonight in this program, we are talking about the community heroes of East End of London that fought racism and that worked so hard for the community to establish itself. In the studio, we have Rajon Uddin Jalal, who is one of the activists from the time, and we have two young people who were born and brought up in the East End of London, especially in and around Brick Lane, which is now known as the Bangla town. Ladies and gentlemen, on our screen you will see a telephone number. If you want to interact with our guest here tonight, you can phone the number and ask any questions that you may have, and our guest will try and answer those questions for you, or I will try and answer those questions for you. So if you do have any questions or you want to know anything, please call in and we would be more than happy to take your calls. Jalal bhai, just before we went on break, we were talking about the struggle that you went through in terms of fighting racism. Obviously, something like that cannot be achieved by one individual. There were other people who stood alongside you, some of the other heroes. Do you want to name some of the people that perhaps, just to kind of,
That's a very
make us
difficult thing
aware
to do, because thousands of people were involved.
Sure,
And
sure.
if you are
But just
going to
the key
just
people.
mention some people, then
Key
the other
people.
people will feel offended. But
The intention is not to offend anybody, but just to kind of mention some key people
Yeah.
and what they did at the time for the community.
yeah, from our parents' generation, the key activists that I can remember who played a role in our advancement would include people like late Ahmed Fakhruddin, late Tasadduq Ahmed, late Tayyib Rahman, late Ghulam Mustafa, late Samsuddin Sahib, and lots of other people.
Sure.
And of course, I have previously mentioned Shah Lutfur Rahman. I think he was a key player. He was one of the educated people in our community. From my generation and the activists who were involved at the time, there were a large number of young people who decided that we were going to have our struggles in this country and live here with dignity and respect. One of the frontrunners would be Aqiqur Rahman, another would be Rafiqullah, Sirajul Haq, and a large number of other people from the youth organizations that I have mentioned to you. So from progressive youth organization, you had people like late Salam Bhai,
Yes.
Ruhul Amin,
They used to
Manwar
call
Ali,
him Boro Salam.
Boro Salam.
Then there was another Salam called Sutu Salam.
Suto Salam, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Suto Salam is still alive.
Still alive.
Is still alive.
Boro Salam Bhai has passed away.
Passed away.
Right.
And from the BUIM, you had people like Chunnu, Billy, late Tariq, you had Noor
Nur Bhai, yes.
Bhai is still around.
Yes.
Lots of other people. So what it is, it was a movement of a
Collective of people, yes. Yeah.
people
From all different generations.
thousands of people were involved,
Yes.
and they paved the way for our advancement.
So it was collaborative effort by the community as a whole, not just the Bangladeshi community, but a multiracial community, and those who were perhaps socialist as well, who joined hand with the minority community.
We should not forget to pay our respect and tribute to the anti-racist organizations who came to support our cause.
Right.
And
If it hadn't been for them, you wouldn't have had that support, would you?
no, and they came in their thousands.
Right.
It was the Anti-Nazi League and the Socialist Workers' Party. The mainstream political parties did not
bother.
get involved.
Sure.
Because
And I think this is something
they were
that
after our votes. They are
this
not
is something
interested in
that
our
we
struggle.
talked about in some of my previous programs, that a lot of the mainstream political parties did not give access to the Bangladeshi community, which is why the Bangladeshis got together and put up an independent candidate.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the independent candidate was elected as a councillor that the other mainstream parties decided to open their doors to us.
That was late Nurul Haq, who was sponsored by the community. And so the establishment was able to feel the strength
Sure.
of our community and
Sure.
feel bound by the voting strength
Sure,
that
sure.
we had, and they knew that we were going to exercise our rights
Sure.
to get political representation.
Representation, right. Jalal, thank you. That's very interesting. I will come back to you. Let me, well, you've heard straight from one of your uncles, may I say so? And of course, people like Jalal, your dad and your dad have obviously made a tremendous contribution to the community in order to fight racism, in order to make their presence felt in the East End of London. They were here to stay. And they did not want it to be treated differently to any other communities living in the East End of London, which is why they stood for themselves. How do you feel, Prithi, about the progress made in terms of racial equality since the time of your ancestors to now?
I feel like there has been a lot of progress due to their movement. There's people in political places which would not have existed at all, where offered better job opportunities, just education in itself. You know, people are out there getting degrees and getting themselves educated and starting careers that will help them flourish. And it is all on the backs of you know, you guys who did all of this.
You're an English graduate, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Did this struggle encourage you to study when you were at school and perhaps at college and university?
It did, because I feel like education in itself is a weapon. So if you go out there, you educate yourself, no one is able to push you down because they can't just look at your race. They have to look at what you have, what kind of qualifications do you have. And whereas before, racism was exposed and it was more abrupt and it was out there, right now they don't have that. There's certain things in place which safeguard us from that. And if you've got the qualifications, sometimes they cannot overlook you. They have to give you that position or that equal, fair right.
Sure. Thank you for that. Prithi, excuse me. Fateha, I'm going to come back to you now. How do you perceive the current state of interracial relations in East End of London compared to the time of your ancestors?
So I think we've progressed a lot, and I think you know, mixed marriages, being able to be friends with people who are from different backgrounds and stuff is more accepted now. Back
And do you
then-
think that has helped the situation or has it made it worse?
No, I think it's definitely helped the situation, especially as a mother. I think it's helped us accept others into our community as well as be accepted into other communities as well. So I think it's.
Do you think that has eased the situation out there?
I think it's definitely helped. I think it's definitely helped, and there has been significant difference in the way people see us, and this is thanks to, you know, us accepting other people into our community and other people accepting us into their communities as well.
Thank you. Jalal, interracial relations. Do you agree with these two young people that it has definitely helped to kind of calm the situation down?
There is more tolerance, there is more understanding, there is less scapegoating. London and the UK is a multicultural community. That is a reality that people have to accept. Our community has to accept that
I will
as
just
well.
stop you there for a moment. I think we have a caller on the line. Let's just take the call. Hello, caller. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, walaikum salam.
Yes, who is calling and where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Sharmina.
Okay, and
I'm
where are you
calling
calling
from
from?
Ilford. but I also grew up in Tower Hamlets.
All right, okay. Is there
I just
anyone that
wanted
you would like to
ask a
speak
quite
to,
a
or
question
perhaps
to the
put a
panel.
question?
And I just wanted to ask whether they think that racism is on the rise again due to Islamophobia, and especially with the onslaught in Gaza currently.
Okay, who do you want to put that question to? Anyone in particular, or to the panel as a whole?
The panel as a whole.
Right. Let's start with Prithi.
Definitely, I feel like
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Islamophobia is very prominent right now, and it is causing tensions between different.
Is it on the
communities.
rise?
And definitely,
In view of the current situation?
yes, it is. It is, and it's very prominent. You can see it's obvious and it's out there. Whether it's even through politicians now, they're outright saying it, and it's sad because they're saying it's making them fearful or uncomfortable. But really, we as a community are just being targeted, and I don't agree with it at all. No.
Thank you. Fateha, what do you think?
I have to agree with what Prithi has said. I think it's unfair that the racism is increasing because of what's happening in Gaza. I think everyone's entitled to have their own opinion and to be able to support whichever party they wish to support, and we should not be targeted, for being pro-Palestine.
Thank you. Jalal, you've heard the two young people. You've heard the question from our caller. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, the genocide in Gaza is being committed with the support of USA, EU and the UK government.
Okay, yes.
And that is to be deplored. I find it unacceptable that mainstream political parties are not supporting justice for the Palestinians.
Is there any justice for the poor people in the world?
And that is what we have to achieve, and that is what we need to struggle for. The fact of the matter is this. I go to demonstrations
Let us take another call. We've got another caller.
Okay.
I get your point. Hello, caller. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Supporting justice for the Palestinians.
Hello, caller. Assalamu alaikum and good evening.
We'll go back to them.
Hello, caller. Please turn your volume down, your TV volume down, and speak to us on the phone. I think there are a lot of echoes in the background, which is why we can't hear you. If you are able to turn your volume down, please do so and speak to us on the phone. If not, give us a call back again. Thank you. Jalal.
Every progressive person has a responsibility to support the Palestinian cause. I go to demonstrations all the time, but unfortunately I find that younger people from our community are not there.
Okay.
If 10% of the people who attend our mosques decided to attend the demonstrations and the rallies that take place every 2 weeks in central London in support of the people of Palestine, then we would have a large turnout. And that is why, can I make a plea that, please make it our responsibility to attend the demonstrations and rallies. And the next demonstration is on Saturday, 18th of May, in central London, outside the BBC.
Thank you. You made your point, Jalal.
Perfect.
Let me ask you something. Oh, I have another caller. Hello, caller. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, caller. Who is calling and where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Nazma. I'm calling from London.
Okay.
So what it is I grew up in Brick Lane as well.
Okay.
So I had a question for one of the sisters on the panel, because she grew up in Brick Lane as well. I just wanted to ask her, how does she think that the tourism in Brick Lane is affecting our culture and our heritage of Brick Lane?
Okay, Nazir. You're
I want
speaking a
to
bit
ask,
slow. I can barely hear you. I'm not sure
Can you
if
hear
our
me?
panel has heard the question. Have you, Fateha?
The question. Yes.
Okay.
So I think what she's asking
Thank
is
you, caller.
how the tourism is affecting Brick Lane. Now, I'd like to say that I believe there are some positives. There are some negatives as well. I think the positive is people come and they experience our people, our food,
Our culture.
our culture, you know, the Brick Lane Masjid and all the takeaways and restaurants, and just have a feel of what Bangladesh could be like.
Thank you, Fateha. I'm not trying to cut you short. I've got another caller.
Oh gosh.
Hello, caller. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
How the tourism is affecting Brick Lane. Now, I'd like to say that I believe...
Caller, you have to speak up. We can hardly hear you. Please turn your TV volume down and speak on the phone.
Hello.
Hello, caller. Assalamu alaikum.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম জি আমার নাম লিহান আমি টাওয়ার থেকে ছিলাম
Caller, we can't hear you. Can you speak up a bit, please?
Yeah.
And if
Can
I
you hear
may
me
ask
now?
our control room if there is a way of turning up the volume, please.
Hello.
Hello, caller. Assalamu alaikum. Caller, can you... Caller, just a small request. If you are going to call us, please make sure you turn your television volume down and speak on the phone. Otherwise, it echoes and we can't hear you. To the last two callers, please call back with your television volume down and we will take your call and speak to you again. Thank you. Right. Prithi, we've heard Fateha. What are your thoughts on the last caller's question?
I feel like tourism is actually it's a good thing. I do feel like it's a positive thing. I understand people feel like, okay, the gentrification is kind of making Bangla town lose its identity, but that isn't just due to that. It's also due to people that have bought their houses and are moving out. And I'll be honest with you, they're renting to people who are probably not a part of the community. I feel like tourism,
So there is a different community kind of moving into Brick Lane area and perhaps taken over the businesses
Definitely.
and everything else.
Yes.
Thank you. Jalal, what are your thoughts? Do you think that the Bangladeshi community has moved on from Brick Lane and
A lot of the people who used to live in Tower Hamlets, including myself, have moved out of the borough. That is partly because the kind of housing they used to have was not sufficient for them. I had to move out because I only had a 1.5 bedroom flat. And so when I had 2 children, I needed a bigger place and I could not afford to buy in Tower Hamlets. Many other people have done the same. The other people who have moved out are people who have decided that they wanted to move out and let out their properties. And that happens naturally, and nobody is going to live in the same place forever.
Sure.
As far as tourism is concerned, I think there are positives in terms of the economic contribution that makes to the area. But you need a balancing arrangement.
Sure.
But the fact of
Do you think that London Borough of Tower Hamlet is doing enough to encourage tourists to come to Tower Hamlets?
From what I see, whenever I go to the area, there are groups of tourists who are being guided by people who know about the local history. So I think it is promoting tourism.
These are
quite
probably
a bit.
tourists from the Tower of London going over to Brick Lane.
Some of them. So I think there is an interaction between the City of London, the Tower of London, and the Brick Lane and Bangla Town area. And I think the other thing that is not so positive is the gentrification. So what you have is a situation where none of the local people can afford to buy their own homes.
Right. Thank you, Jalal. That's very true.
In the private
I need to
sector.
go on another short break.
Yeah.
Inshallah, we will continue after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't go anywhere. We are about to go on a short break. We will be back straight after the break. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us. If you have just joined us, a very big welcome. This is the last segment in our community issue program. Tonight we have been talking about racism, particularly in the East End of London, and the people that fought racism at the time. And also, we talked about a couple of young people who were brought up in the area, who had seen the struggle that their parent had gone through, and how their lives have changed as a result of the struggle that's been faced by their parents and their elder generation. We are into our final segment now, but please, if you want us to do some more programs to talk about racism and the struggle of the community, we are more than happy to do that. And the two young people that we've got in the studio tonight have expressed an interest that we should do something to follow up, so that they themselves can organize amongst the young people to kind of celebrate the success of the community, and also at the same time to be educational, to teach them about the history of the East End of London and the struggle that the community had went through. May I go to Prithi first? Okay, we've got another caller. Let me just take another call. Hello, caller. Good evening and Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, caller.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Ji. Where are you calling
I
from?
think you're
What's
doing
your
a
name?
very, very nice show, community matters, and lovely people in your panel. May Allah give them Jannat. And my question is Bangladesh, you just talked about it. Bangladesh people are getting marriages, and London people are not doing it. And these three girls have run away to get married.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how relevant this is. Three girls have run away to get married.
I have no idea.
Thank you for your call, caller. Appreciate your call. Let's talk about racism. Maybe we could talk about young people running away to get married in another program. Right, so Prithi, what do you think that the young people needs to do in order to continue with the legacy, but at the same time ensure that this is not forgotten?
I feel like we should commemorate the pioneers, and we could do this whether it's through putting out literature, so writing autobiographies, biographies, also maybe erecting a statue of some kind in dedication to, what
Some
it
of the
is.
key figures, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like just always talking about it, passing on the stories, never forgetting the struggle, and, making sure
And that's
that
to
everyone knows.
commemorate the people that have fought in that struggle.
Yeah, the people we've lost during this struggle, the people that have fought for us to become what we are today and have the opportunities.
Okay.
And yeah, definitely just keep
So
spreading the
what
word.
role do you think that young people should play? And this is a question for both of you.
What would you say?
So I think what we need to do as parents and people of the second generation is we need to educate our youths, our children, our nieces and our nephews of the real sort of background about Brick Lane, Whitechapel and sort of the East End. And I think by doing that, by getting people involved, by having little communities and having a sort of a youth centre or gathering a number of people.
But there are a number of organizations that exist, organizations like the Al-Tabali Foundation and many others out there that perhaps young people can link up to.
There's not enough
to get the information and perhaps join hands
There's not enough publications of these events. I feel like as I was talking on the break, I feel like there isn't enough. They're not publicating it well enough. They're not promoting it well enough. We get promotions of the fun fairs and the Mela.
How do you think the young people should do? Link up with the others?
Definitely.
Right. Prithi, we've only got a few minutes left. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I feel like the youth have to take more responsibility, whether that's me or you, or just our relatives and our family members, our friends, and we ourselves have to organise something. Like you guys have done your part, you've done amazing.
Well, this is not the end of it. ATN is a community channel.
Yes.
And if you young people feel that you need to do more, we are here to help you, and we will offer that helping hand to you. But you need to organize amongst yourself and think exactly what you want to do tell us and we will do a program for you. It's not a problem.
Definitely, we'll look at doing outreach and just getting out there,
Thank you.
promoting.
Thank you so much, Jalal bhai.
Well, the battle needs to continue so that we can achieve meaningful equality, freedom, and justice, not for just our community. We are going to become custodians of the wider community. Our younger people will have to take responsibility for the wider society. And so we want to pass on the baton to the next generation. And if you want to do that by becoming involved in the existing organizations, do that. If you want to create your own structures and platforms, do that. But the battle needs to continue.
Thank you, Jalal bhai. Thank you so much. I'm very sorry to cut it short, but I'm coming to the end of my program. Can I thank you for giving us the time tonight? Can I thank the two young people, Prithi and Fateha, for coming along? I think it's been an interesting discussion, an eye-opener, certainly for the younger generation who maybe is not aware of the history.
Definitely.
We will do a similar episode again if you feel there is a need for it in 4 weeks' time or whatever the time you think is necessary. And in the meantime, if you young people want to continue, I would suggest that you go out there, perhaps join hands with existing organization, gather yourself, and then come back and we will do another program for you.
Thank
So in conclusion, our discussion with Rajon, Uddin, Jalal bhai, Prithi Ummie and Fateha Begum had shed some light on racism and the struggle that the community had gone through in the early 70s. So ladies and gentlemen, can I thank you all for watching the program. We've, I think, gained a deeper understanding of the challenges that our community had gone through, the impact of race, and the ongoing struggle for equalities and justice. And I think that's very important.
Definitely.
Thank you all for watching the program. We'll be back again in 2 weeks' time. Keep watching ATN Bangla. And until then, please stay safe and keep well. Assalamu alaikum. Good night.